Hi and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave and this is episode 769A, and today's date is September 18th, 2015, and the title of this episode is History is About to Repeat Itself. The Fed just made the same 1927 mistake. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, earlier today, before the US markets even opened, there was a UK flash crash. Everything started to fall apart, and they're looking into it right now, trying to investigate why all of a sudden there was a sudden move in the FTSE 100 index. I mean, it just fell directly down. Now, of course, some people are calling this a fat finger. Ooh, there was a mistake. But I'm sure it was not a mistake because there is no coincidences. They're not making these type of mistakes in the market. This was done on purpose. Now, we realize that the central bankers, they need to get rid of cash because they understand that when this whole entire economy falls apart, they're going to have to use the bail-in documents which they created, and they're going to have to capture everyone's money that's in the bank. And we see Bank of England chief economist Andy Haldane appears to have fully transitioned to the dark side. He made the case for the radical option of supporting the economy with negative interest rates, and even suggesting that cash will need to be abolished. So we're continually hearing out of all the central banks that they need to get rid of cash. And they're pushing this hard right now because they realize they're running out of time. They can't have the people run to the banks like the people in Greece did and remove the cash, because then the banks will be insolvent. They will have no one to take the money from to prop up the banks. This is going to pose a problem. And one of the ways to fix it is to stop people from taking out cash by getting rid of it. I mean, this is their plan. Is it going to work? Most likely not. And here in the United States, the economy, with all these layoffs, with retail contracting, with home sales starting to fall apart, the economy is not getting any better. Actually, it's accelerating. And as we move into this fall and into the winter, it's just going to get worse. And of course, they'll have the excuse that it's the weather. This is why sales in the holiday season weren't very well, didn't do well. Well, the holiday season is the time when sales are supposed to do well. Stores depend on this. Businesses depend on this. And we saw last year with the unemployment around, 5.8, 5.9%, sales were absolutely horrific. Now that unemployment is down to 5.1%, we should see sales do incredibly well. But if we look at the track record and we go back to 2009, going forward when unemployment was at 11, 10, 9%. Sales were much better. And now we're down in the 5 range and sales are awful. How could that be? Let's use some common sense here. It makes no sense. If more people are employed, more people are making money, why are sales worse off? They should be a lot better if unemployment was at 10% or 11% or 9%. But we're not seeing that. This is one way you can tell the numbers are completely manipulated. I mean, Qualcomm right now is going to be laying off 1,300 people in San Diego. All we are hearing right now are more and more layoffs. And the housing market is not going to get any better. We see the yuan was devalued, which means that the people, the investors in China who are buying the real estate here in the U.S. is going to be more expensive. We're starting to see a slowdown of purchases from Chinese buyers, which is going to hurt the market. I mean, the people of the United States, they haven't been purchasing because we know the mortgage departments have been laying off thousands upon thousands of people. We know mortgage applications have been taking a dive. And now we see foreign investors stepping back away saying, listen, this is getting too expensive now because our money doesn't go as far. This is going to pose a problem. We have the Fed out there creating this free money, giving it to investors and hedge funds to continually prop up the housing market. And we have to remember, they don't want the prices to come down. They want them to go up, because if the prices come down, all the houses that the banks are holding on their books that they didn't release to the market, they're going to lose value, which means the banks are going to have to adjust their balance sheets, which means these banks are going to be insolvent if they do this. And this is why they're trying to keep the prices up so high, because what they did was they told the banks, listen, do not release the foreclosures, do not release these homes, keep them on your books. We need to drive the prices up. And this is what's been happening all along. Meanwhile, we had hedge funds and investment companies purchasing houses by the thousands. Hold on to them, rent them if you can. Foreign investors come in, purchase homes. This is all starting to fall apart at this point. And we have noticed that more and more homes are staying on the market. The prices are coming down. They can't get rid of them. Traffic's drying up. Existing home sales are down. New construction's down. It's all starting to look like 2008. It's like we're repeating the same exact patterns. Now, the central banks in the Middle East are trying to convince the Gulf states to begin issuing debt, even if there is no need to borrow, because we have to remember one important thing. The product of the central bank is debt. Just issue debt wherever you possibly can. It doesn't make a difference. As long as it's out there, our system's propped up. And this is what they've been doing all this time by going into each one of these countries. Removing the government, replacing it with a puppet government, setting up a central bank, issuing debt, and putting the dollar on their natural resources to prop the system up. We see Peter Schiff is out there saying, once again, the Fed's bark fails to live up to the bite. The Fed's Open Market Committee painted a picture of a stable and growing economy that was just about ready for a tightening cycle to begin. Its decision to hold off for now was positioned as a temporary concession to largely overseas developments. But the Fed, and the rest of the economic establishment for that matter, continues to ignore the steady torrent of negative data that shows us that the economy is imploding. Look at manufacturing, business investment, productivity, consumer confidence numbers. They're just ignoring all that. And they're pretending that the economy is recovering and everything is fine. Martin Armstrong is out there, and he said the Federal Reserve yielded to international pressure, and they're making the very same mistake that it was made in 1927. Back then, there was a secret meeting, and the Fed agreed to lower U.S. rates to try to help Europe and thereby deflect capital inflows back to Europe. The exact opposite unfolded in the aftermath, and even more money abandoned Europe and flowed directly into the U.S. share market. In 1927, the Fed lowered U.S. rates to try to help Europe, which was then in the middle of an economic debt crisis, which is happening today the same exact way. It is very curious how history repeats itself. In doing so, they are condemning U.S. pension funds as well as the elderly to financial doom, setting in motion the next financial crisis. We see the same scenario now unfolding as it did in 1929 when we had the big crash. And the Fed, they're losing all credibility. The Fed itself realizes its credibility is fading fast. RBS also showed, as a recent survey of its clients, a whopping 63% replied that the Fed is losing its credibility. In other words, it has little to lose by doing what will erode its credibility that much more. RBS notes that the price action in market today is negative, suggesting increasing worries. According to Alberto Gallo, the biggest worries are the following. The first is that by keeping rates lower for even longer, the emerging market imbalances the Fed is worrying about will grow even larger, making it harder to exit stimulus. No, they're not going to exit. They're going to increase stimulus. The second is a question of the value of forward guidance after the Fed has repeatedly called for a hike, then backed out. 55 times they backed out, telling us, oh no, the economy needs to be much stronger. Unemployment needs to be at 6%. It needs to be at 5.8%. It needs to be at 5.5%. It needs to be at 4.9%. They keep changing it because they know if they raise it, it will completely collapse the economy. The third is that the Fed may have limited or no ammunition to react to the next potential shock. I think they're completely empty at this point. They have nothing left. And this market will come down. This is why we've been saying, and this is why a lot of people are out there saying, listen, prepare. You have this time. Prepare for what is coming. Get your food, get your medical supplies, get your gold and silver, get cash on hand. Of course, hide it someplace that nobody knows where it is. Same with your gold and silver. Get weapons, get extra medicine. Continually doing this. Go shopping in the warehouse stores, in your supermarket, in Amazon. If you haven't started, go to lifereliance.com. They prepackage everything. They have bug out bags, water filtration system. Anything that you need, you can get and customize. So you need to continually do this. I have not stopped because I see the writing on the wall. If you don't see it, there's no reason to listen to me. Go listen to CNN, MSNBC. Everything will be fine. And again, if you listen to them back in 2008, they convinced everyone that everything was fine until it fell apart. Then when it fell apart, they tried to convince everyone that everything was going to be fine in 2009 in the spring, but it just got worse. This time, there's no bailouts, people. The government is not going to hand out bailouts because of the Frank-Dodd Act. Guess what? They're going to be going inward to get your money from the banks. And people are going to be shocked. Now, we know Deutsche Bank is going to be laying off 10 to 13,000 people in their banking system. We also are seeing that Deutsche Bank has announced it will shut down part of its business in Russia. And the Moscow corporate banking and securities business will close and move to another international hub. About 1,300 employees in Russia will lose their jobs. And this is all under a U.S. criminal probe because they are doing an investigation in Deutsche Bank because the U.S. regulators are alleging that they have been involved in money laundering in Russia. So the bank has suspended a number of employees working in its Moscow equities trading operation earlier this year, and they're waiting to hear the results from the investigation. So we'll have to check up on that to see what happens in that area. In Nigeria, there was a scare because the central bank head uttered the words, "Don't panic." And I've said this in the past. When a central banker, a U.S. government employee comes out with anything, always think the opposite, especially when they say don't panic. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is contained. There is no recession coming. There is no market crash. The economy is strong. It's always the opposite. So you know when the central bank uttered these words in Nigeria, don't panic, everyone started to panic. The financial system in Nigeria is in trouble. And what was happening there is the banks halt lending to each other. They were running out of cash. And there was a huge problem. And people started to panic in Nigeria. Now, Obama, as we know, is letting in the illegal immigrants. They're coming over into this country. As long as they cross the border, they get working papers. They can take out student loans. They can work for corporations. They can join the military. They can buy a car. And all this is done for many different agendas. One of them is to get them into corporations at the low-paying jobs, and corporations don't have to pay the penalties because they're not eligible for Obamacare. Plus, it allows the U.S. government central bankers to blow up the bubbles even more, with these people going back to school and buying automobiles using debt. And we see Obama right now wants to take it to the next level. He wants to have the illegal immigrants basically become citizens. There's about 8.8 million who are eligible right now to apply for citizenship. Now, why would he want to do this at this point? Well, we know they need to get Obamacare up to that 20-something million mark, and they need millions of people to do this. And if they become citizens, guess what? They're eligible for Obamacare at this point. So more illegals come in, they get their working papers, they can replace those people in the corporations, they don't have to pay the penalty. Those people then become eligible to be citizens, and they can join Obamacare to pump those numbers up. This is the game they are playing. It's all for the corporations, it's all for the central bank, it's all for everyone except for the people here in the United States. Now, I have nothing against people coming into this country. This is why we have borders. This is why we have a process to check each person, make sure they're not bringing in diseases, make sure they don't have a criminal record. But they're not doing that. The people are just jumping over the border, and they're just relocating them to a different area without any checks whatsoever. And most of these people don't even show up for court dates. So it's not that we don't want people to come into America. America is the melting pot, and if you go through the proper procedures, there's no problem here. But when you decide to create your own laws without talking to anyone else, just by writing something up, this is not democracy. This is not the way the United States was built. But we see Obama is doing it a different way. Not just him, but pretty much every president that came before him. And it's just gotten worse as time goes on, because we can see right now the economy is completely falling apart. They understand this. They're grabbing everything they possibly can. They're trying to prop up the system. And the whole thing right now is not for the people. It is for themselves. And we are definitely seeing this. This is fascism at its best. This is what we are seeing right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.